Imagine standing in the heart of modern Rome today. The Colosseum towers proudly, restored and swarming with tourists snapping photos under a bright Italian sun. Traffic hums along wide avenues lined with cafes, and the air buzzes with the energy of a global metropolis of over 2 million people. But let's strip away the centuries. Rewind the clock to the year 1000 AD. That same Colosseum? It's a crumbling shell, overgrown with weeds. Its arches serving as makeshift shelters for squatters or stripped for stone by desperate locals. The forums, once epicenters of empire, are marshy fields grazed by cattle. Rome, the eternal city, has shrunk to a shadow, a ragged settlement of perhaps 30,000 souls huddled amid vast ruins, ruled by feuding nobles and a papacy entangled in scandal. How did the mightiest city on earth fall so low? And what was life really like in this forgotten Rome 1,000 years ago? Stay with me as we reconstruct this lost world, layer by layer, from the streets to the strongholds, revealing a city clinging to survival in the ruins of its glory. Urban layout and city planning visualize the transformation on screen. The modern grid of Rome fades, replaced by a sparse medieval map. In 1000 AD, Rome's urban layout bore little resemblance to the sprawling imperial capital of antiquity or the organized Renaissance city that would follow. The ancient Aurelian Walls, built in the 3rd century AD and spanning about 12 miles, still encircled the city, but vast swaths inside were desolate. Archaeological evidence from sites like the Forum of Trajan shows that by the 10th century, much of the historic center was abandoned, turned into farmland, vineyards, or wild vegetation. The population clustered in a few habitable zones, the bend of the Tiber River in the Campus Martius, where the river provided water and transport, the Vatican Hill across the river, protected by the Leonine Walls, constructed in 848–852 AD after a Saracen raid, and the Lateran area in the southeast, home to the Papal Palace. This contraction wasn't planned but forced by circumstance. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 AD, invasions by Goths, Vandals, and Lombards devastated infrastructure. The Gothic War of 535–554 AD, documented by historian Procopius, left Rome depopulated and its aqueducts severed, turning low-lying areas like the Roman Forum into malarial swamps. By 1000 AD, the city had no central planning authority akin to the ancient magistrates. Instead, noble families informally divided territories, building fortified compounds amid the ruins. Streets were narrow, winding paths of mud and recycled cobblestones, often blocked by debris from collapsed ancient buildings. Bridges like the Ponzi Milius, dating to the 2nd century BC, remained vital links, but were frequently repaired after floods. Compare this to today. The Forum is an excavated tourist site, but in 1000 AD, it was a cattle market called the Campo Vicino, Cowfield. The Palatine Hill, once imperial palaces, hosted vegetable gardens. This fragmented layout reflected Rome's shift from imperial hub to a semi-rural papal seat, where survival trumped grandeur. Yet, this very disarray preserved ancient remains, as lack of new construction left monuments buried rather than demolished. As we move to architecture, see how Romans of 1000 AD literally built their world from the bones of the past. Architecture and building materials fade in visuals of crumbling marble columns repurposed into church walls, towers rising from ancient foundations. In 1000 AD, Rome's architecture was a patchwork of survival, dominated by reuse rather than innovation. Primary sources like the Liber Pontificalis, a chronicle of papal biographies, describe spolia, recycled materials from ancient structures, as the backbone of medieval building. Marble from the Colosseum or Trajan's Column was stripped and burned in kilns to produce lime for mortar, while bricks and stones from aqueducts and temples formed new walls. This architectural cannibalism, as historians term it, was practical amid economic collapse. New quarrying was rare due to lost engineering knowledge and labor shortages. Churches exemplified this style. Santa Maria in Cosmedin, rebuilt around 772 AD but modified by 1000, featured columns from pagan temples supporting its nave, a common Romanesque trait with rounded arches and simple facades. The Basilica of San Clemente, layered over a 4th century church and Mithraic temple, shows archaeological strata of continuous adaptation. Noble families erected over 900 towers by the 12th century, per medieval chronicler Benedetto of Soracte tall, square structures of brick and tufa stone, often atop ancient ruins like the Theatre of Marcellus. These were 5,100 feet high, with battlements for defense, contrasting sharply with today's preserved landmarks. Homes varied by class. Wealthy lived in multi-story stone houses with courtyards, reusing Roman insulae foundations, while commoners occupied wooden or wattle and daub shacks amid ruins. Sanitation infrastructure, like the Cloaca Maxima sewer from the 6th century BC, was clogged and ineffective, leading to frequent floods documented in papal records. No grand public baths survived intact. Instead, small thermal springs served locals. Today, Rome's architecture celebrates restoration, think Bernini's fountains or Michelangelo's dome. But in 1000 AD, it symbolized decay, the Pantheon, intact, but converted to a church in 609 AD, stood as a rare exception amid widespread ruin. This material scavenging shaped a resilient but humble cityscape, mirroring the social hierarchies we'll explore next. Population size and social classes zoom in on animated crowds, a sparse medieval gathering versus today's throngs. Around 1000 AD, Rome's population hovered at 30,000, according to estimates in the History of Rome by chronicler Lightprand of Cremona and modern historians like Chris Wickham in The Inheritance of Rome. This was a drastic drop from the 1 million peak under Emperor Trajan in 117 AD, caused by plagues, wars, and migration. The 6th century Gothic War halved it to 50,000, and by the 10th century's Saeculum Obscurum, Dark Century, it stabilized low. Social classes were rigidly divided. At the top were aristocratic families like the Theophylacti, Crescentii, and Tusculani, who controlled the papacy and senate. These nobles, numbering a few hundred, derived wealth from land, tolls, and papal offices, living in fortified palaces. The Liber Pontificalis notes families like Marosias, who installed relatives as popes. Below them, a merchant class emerged, perhaps 10–20 of the population, involved in pilgrim trade and banking, as seen in records from the Vatican archives. The bulk, 70–80, were commoners, artisans, farmers, and laborers. Many were serf-like, tied to church or noble lands, per feudal documents from the Regestum Farfans Abbey. Immigrants from Lombard or Frankish territories added diversity, but slavery had waned, replaced by servitude. Women had limited roles, often in convents or households, as per canon law. Contrast with modern Rome, diverse, middle class dominated. In 1000 AD, class dictated everything from housing in ruins to access to grain doles from papal stores. This stratified society influenced daily routines, as we'll see. Daily life and occupations picture street scenes, muddy paths, vendors hawking bread, nobles on horseback. Daily life in 1000 AD Rome was gritty and precarious, far from ancient opulence. Sunrise brought laborers to fields within the walls, cultivating wheat, vines, and olives on former imperial grounds, as archaeological pollen analysis from the Forum confirms. Breakfast was simple, bread and cheese, per dietary records and monastic chronicles like the Annals of Fulda. Occupations centered on survival. Artisans, blacksmiths, potters, weavers worked in small workshops reusing ancient tabernae, producing goods for local use. Farmers tended market gardens, supplying the city with vegetables and fruit. Pilgrims boosted service jobs, innkeepers, guides, and relic sellers near St. Peter's Basilica. Women managed households, spinning wool or baking, while children labored from age 7, as per customary laws. Evenings involved family meals of porridge, beans, and wine in dim homes lit by oil lamps. Entertainment was communal, feasts on saints' days, per the Roman calendar, or storytelling in piazzas. Dangers lurked: floods from the Tiber, documented in 999 AD papal letters, or feuds spilling into streets. Today, Romans enjoy cafes and nightlife. Then, life was short, averaging 40 years due to disease, per skeletal studies from medieval cemeteries like San Vincenzo al Volturno. Yet, resilience shone through religious routines and community bonds. Trade and economic activity transitioned to market visuals, sparse stalls versus modern shops. Trade in 1000 AD was modest, reliant on pilgrims drawn to Rome's holy sites. The Vatican archives record thousands visiting St. Peter's tomb, buying food, lodging, and souvenirs like lead badges. This influx supported an economy of services, with merchants trading wine, grain, and cloth from nearby Lazio regions. Economic activity focused on papal bureaucracy, employing scribes and officials. Banking emerged among Jewish and noble families, financing papal elections, as Lightprand describes. Long-distance trade was limited, silk from Byzantium, spices via Venice, per commercial pacts with Otto III. The economy grew slightly under Otto's brief residency in 998-1002, minting coins and repairing roads. But overall, it was subsistence-based, with bartering common amid coin shortages. Modern Rome thrives on tourism and finance. Then, economic shifts from invasions to pilgrim booms affected all, leading to political turbulence. Political control and power structures show power struggles. Noble towers, papal processions. Politics in 1000 AD revolved around the papacy and Holy Roman Empire. The Saeculum Obscurum 904-964 saw nobles like the Tusculani dominate pope selections, but by 1000, Emperor Otto III sought reform. Crowned in 996, he installed Pope Sylvester to 999-1003, a French scholar, to counter Roman aristocracy. Power structures included the Senate, a noble assembly, and papal curia. Otto resided on the Aventine Hill, aiming to revive Imperial Rome, per his biographer Thietmar of Merseburg. But rebellions, like the 1001 uprising led by John Crescentius, forced him out. He died in 1002. Local control rested with militias of families like the Crescentii, who built towers for leverage. The Papal States, established in 756 AD by Pepin the Short's donation, provided territorial base. Unlike today's democratic Italy, politics was violent, with consequences rippling to ordinary lives through taxes and conscriptions. Religious influence depicts basilicas, pilgrims kneeling. Religion dominated, with the papacy as Christianity's head. Sylvester II, formerly Gerbert Dorillic, promoted learning and reformed clergy, per his letters. The East-West Schism loomed 1054, but in 1000, Rome bridged traditions. Pilgrimages to apostles' tombs influenced daily piety. Masses, processions, relics. Monasteries like Subiaco preserved texts, aiding cultural continuity. The church owned vast lands, per donation records, shaping economy and politics. Corruption persisted, but faith unified the populace. Today, Vatican is sovereign. Then, it was Rome's lifeblood, teaching endurance amid hardship. Cultural norms illustrate feasts, family gatherings. Cultural norms emphasized family loyalty and honor, fueling feuds documented in chronicles like those of Benedict of Soracte. Nobles prized genealogy tying to ancient Romans, per inscriptions. Education was clerical, with Sylvester II introducing Arabic numerals. Art was religious. Mosaics in churches like Sant'Agnese Fuori la Mora. Social norms included arranged marriages for alliances and gender roles confining women, per canon law. Unlike modern individualism, community and faith defined identity. Methods of defense or warfare visualize walls, towers under siege. Defense relied on the Aurelian Walls, repaired by popes, and Leonine walls safeguarding the Vatican. Noble towers served as urban fortresses, enabling guerrilla warfare in feuds. Warfare involved alliances. Otto III's 996 campaign against Lombards used imperial troops. Saracen threats waned, but internal strife was constant. Papal militias, per Liber Pontificalis, protected against rebellions. No standing army. Defense was futile. Today, Rome is peaceful. Then, walls taught vigilance. Transformation and lessons as visuals blend back to modern Rome. Reflect. By 1000 AD, Rome was a ruin-cloaked survivor, shaped by invasions, plagues, and power struggles. The 11th century brought Norman threats and the investiture controversy 1075-1122, eroding noble control. The 12th century commune movement democratized somewhat, paving for Renaissance revival. What changed Rome? Economic recovery from trade, papal reforms under Gregory VII, and population growth to 50,000 by 1200. Ancient ruins became quarries, but preserved heritage inspired rebirth. This past teaches civilization's fragility. Empires fall, but cities endure through adaptation. Rome's survival reminds us that history's layers ruins beneath streets shape our present, urging appreciation for the eternal city's resilient spirit.